From old seaport towns to shadowy New England forests, Massachusetts is packed with strange stories. Beneath the cobbled streets of Boston and the windswept beaches of Cape Cod lie echoes of the past that refuse to rest, whispers of witches, phantom lights over lost battlefields, and cursed graves guarded by unseen forces. This land, steeped in colonial history and ancient fear, has given birth to legends so powerful they still walk beside us, in the quiet creak of old floorboards, in the cold breath that fogs no mirror, and in the names we dare not speak after dark. Today we bring 12 haunting legends of Massachusetts back to life. And when the last tale ends, you may never see this historic state the same way again. Legend 1. The Red-Headed Hitchhiker of Route 44. They say if you're driving down Route 44 near Rehoboth after midnight, don't stop for anyone, especially if he has fiery red hair. The legend begins along a lonely stretch of road between Seekonk and Rehoboth, a route cut through swampland and forest. In the 1960s, drivers began reporting a strange figure, a man with shoulder-length red hair, a flannel shirt and vacant, glaring eyes. He'd appear on the roadside, thumbing a ride. Those who picked him up would see him sit silently, until he vanished mid-drive. Others weren't so lucky. Some claimed the hitchhiker didn't ask for a ride, forced one, appearing suddenly in the back seat, slamming on the car hood at a stoplight or speaking in garbled words from the darkness. One trucker swore he nearly crashed when the man's ghostly face appeared in his passenger mirror, grinning without joy. As the decades passed, the stories didn't fade. A woman in 1984 said the radio in her car turned to static just before a red-haired man walked through her closed passenger door. In 2005, a college student swerved off the road near the same bend, later telling police a man had walked in front of her car, yet no one was found. Skeptics blame hallucinations, gas leaks, or even old folklore merging with late-night fear, but locals have their own explanations. Some say he was a man murdered on that road, doomed to relive his last moment. Others think he's something older, an echo from the swamp, a spirit bound not to place but to travelers themselves. Today, Route 44 remains busy and the red-headed hitchhiker still draws new stories. Some drivers leave their passenger seats cluttered just in case he's looking for a place to sit. Because on this road, if you glance in the rearview mirror and see a flash of red, it may already be too late. Legend 2. The Witch of Marblehead. She's seen when the fog rolls thick off the Atlantic, standing barefoot on the rocks, her arms outstretched to the sea, her eyes black as drowned coal. The Witch of Marblehead waits where the land ends, and old curses begin. This legend reaches back to the 1690s, the time of witch hunts and hysteria. But unlike Salem, Marblehead's dark tale was never fully recorded, only passed in hushed whispers, carved into the bones of coastal lore. They say her name was Mary Roper, a healer and midwife accused by a merchant's wife. After a child was stillborn, the tide turned quickly against her. Without trial, without mercy, Mary was taken to the cliffs and tied to a stake where the waves broke hardest. Her last words were not screams, but a chant spoken in an ancient tongue as the sea swallowed her whole. Fishermen were the first to speak of her return. Nets would rise torn and twisted, boats found wrecked without storm, and on moonless nights a woman in a soaked black dress would be seen walking along the surf, never leaving footprints, humming a lullaby no one could place. In 1931, a lighthouse keeper reportedly saw her vanish into mist, only to reappear atop the beacon without ever touching a step. During World War II, a Navy watchman claimed he heard a woman's voice whispering coordinates of enemy ships just before a skirmish. He died 3 weeks later, found floating in the harbor, his eyes open and filled with salt. Some say she punishes those who disrespect the sea. Others believe she protects it, her vengeance aimed only at greed and pride. But all agree, never call her name aloud near the Marblehead cliffs. Today, people still leave flowers on the rocks at low tide, quiet offerings for the woman drowned, but not dead. In the end, Mary Roper's body may have vanished into the surf, but her voice still rises with the tide. Legend 3. The Hoosac Tunnel, the Bloody Pit. Beneath the Berkshire Mountains runs a cold black vein, nearly 5 miles of stone sorrow and screams. The Hoosac Tunnel took 25 years to build, and over 190 lives to finish. Locals call it the Bloody Pit. Construction began in the 1850s, an ambitious effort to bore straight through the mountain, but from the very beginning it was cursed. Explosions went wrong, drilling rigs collapsed, and toxic fumes swallowed entire crews. In 1867, an entire hoist chamber exploded, killing 13 men and burying them alive under tons of rubble. Rescuers heard knocking from behind the stone walls, but it stopped after a week. And then the hauntings began. Miners working the night shift reported disembodied voices echoing through the tunnel. They saw pale figures in the steam men in 19th century work clothes, faces charred, eyes hollow. In 1875, 2 workers went in to inspect the central shaft. Only one returned. He stumbled into the sunlight raving about phantoms in the smoke, and was later institutionalized. By the early 20th century, rail workers were refusing assignments through the tunnel. One engineer swore that as his train passed through, the air turned to ice, and a handprint appeared on the inside of the engine's glass. Impossible, he said, since no one else was in the cab. Skeptics point to methane gas, claustrophobia, or hallucinations brought on by carbon monoxide. But even today, the tunnel is only lightly used, mostly for freight. Railroad companies rarely speak of it, but the local legends persist. Paranormal investigators report that electronics fail inside the tunnel, and EVP recordings contain whispers. One clear voice said simply, "And no matter the season, the Hoosac Tunnel stays bone-chillingly cold, too cold, some say, for the dead to rest." So if you walk near the mouth of the Bloody Pit, listen close. You might just hear the faint tap of a pickaxe, or a voice, deep underground, calling out for help that never came. Legend 4. The Spirits of Dogtown. Just inland from Gloucester's salty coast, lies a place swallowed by thorns and stone, a forgotten village of crumbled cellars and crooked paths, where only the wind remembers the names of the dead. Dogtown began as a settlement during the 1600s. It thrived modestly, its location shielding residents from coastal attacks. But as the centuries passed, the village began to wither. By the early 1800s, most had left. Those who stayed behind were said to be the outcasts, widows, vagabonds, and, according to rumor, witches. One such woman was Thomasine Younger. Locals called her Tammy. She walked with a cane, lived alone, and kept a pack of dogs as her only companions. Some claimed she spoke to the beasts in a language no one else knew. Others said she cursed those who mocked her, and that crops would die or storms would rise if she was angered. After her death, people avoided Dogtown entirely, but they say her dogs never left. Hikers today tell stories of growls in the bushes where nothing moves, or of seeing ghostly hounds darting between the trees. Some even report a tall, thin woman watching from the stone ruins, vanishing when approached. In 1984, a Boy Scout troop camped in the area. One scout woke screaming, claiming a woman in rags stood over him whispering, "This is mine." His tent was found slashed, but no one ever saw who or what had done it. Locals still warn not to linger after sunset. The stones grow colder, the air tighter. Many of Dogtown's original cellar holes remain, marked only by moss and time. One stone bears the carved word courage, another, simply whether it's spirits, residual energy, or centuries of fear feeding upon itself, Dogtown lives up to its name, feral, forgotten, and never truly silent. Legend 5. The Haunted Hockomock Swamp. They call it the place where spirits dwell. Hockomock Swamp, 6,000 acres of tangled wilderness stretching through southeastern Massachusetts. Part of the mysterious Bridgewater Triangle, this land has a history older than the colonies and stranger than legend dares whisper. Long before settlers came, the Wampanoag people regarded the swamp as sacred home to animal spirits and powerful forces that should not be angered. During King Philip's War in the 1670s, native warriors used the swamp as a stronghold, vanishing into its mists, striking like ghosts. Blood was spilled here, and the earth remembers. In the centuries since, the swamp has become a vortex of bizarre activity. Glowing orbs drift silently through the trees. Ghostly apparitions in colonial garb walk the water's edge. People report hearing war drums from the reeds and seeing phantom fires flickering just beyond reach. Then come the creatures, black panthers with no tracks, thunderbirds with wingspans wide enough to blot out the sun, and something else, something humanoid, 7 feet tall, covered in matted fur, glimpsed standing at the edge of the bog before melting into the fog. In 1978, a local man claimed he was chased from the woods by a red-eyed beast with a guttural growl. In 1992, a police officer reported seeing a tall gray figure with long arms cross the road in 2 strides. And as recently as 2013, a group of teens described a silent triangle of lights hovering above the swamp before shooting upward at impossible speed. Skeptics call it pareidolia, or swamp gas, or simply the power of suggestion. But those who felt Hockomock's chill know better. There are places where the boundary between worlds wears thin, where time fractures and something primal stirs beneath the peat and fog. And when the mist coils through the branches and the frogs fall silent, the spirits of Hockomock Swamp rise to walk again. Legend 6, the Spectre of Giles Corey. More weight. Those were the last words of Giles Corey, pressed to death beneath heavy stones in 1692, during the Salem witch trials. But in Salem his punishment didn't end with death, because they say Giles Corey still walks, and every time he appears, blood soon follows. Corey was a stubborn farmer in his 70s, accused of witchcraft alongside his wife Martha, but unlike others he refused to enter a plea. In doing so, he avoided trial and forfeiture of his land. The authorities responded with pene forte dura, a slow crushing death meant to break a man's spirit. Corey endured for 3 days, never crying out, never confessing, only repeating that final infamous phrase. After his death, the land where he died, just outside the old Salem jail, was said to grow cold even in summer. Prison guards whispered of seeing a figure crouched near the wall, his body broken but his eyes full of fire. When the Great Salem Fire of 1914 tore through the city, some claimed they saw a man matching Corey's description walking the flames, untouched. But perhaps the most chilling part of the legend is the curse. For centuries, every time disaster has befallen Salem, whether fire, flood, or misfortune, someone claims to have seen Giles Corey in the days before. Most notably in 1978, just before a major jailhouse fire, 2 officers reported a shadowy figure crossing the yard at dawn. One described it as a man stooped by grief or vengeance. Corey's gravestone stands today in Howard Street Cemetery. Visitors leave coins, stones, even apologies, but locals know better than to disturb it. They say the curse is still alive, that Giles Corey's soul, pressed by injustice, cannot rest until his name is cleared. And so he remains a silent warning in the shadow of Salem, the ghost of a man who bore the weight of stone and of history, and who still watches the town that betrayed him. Legend 7, the monster of Lake Chargagug Monchagagug, Chalbonagunga Mug. With a name as long as a serpent's coil, Lake Chargagug Monchagagug, Chalbonagunga Mug, known more mercifully as Webster Lake, holds more than just water. Beneath its depths, some say, swims a creature that defies description, a beast so old it predates the town, lurking just below the surface, watching. The name, drawn from Nipmuc language, loosely translates as "you fish on your side, I fish on mine, and nobody fishes in the middle." but legends suggest that something else claimed the middle long ago. The earliest stories come from Native American oral tradition of a guardian spirit in the water, neither good nor evil, but bound to balance. It was said to take the form of a massive snake or scaled leviathan, appearing only when the natural order was broken. In 1892, a group of boys fishing near the southern cove fled home pale and shaking, claiming they saw a head like a horse rise from the lake breathing mist and dragging ripples as long as a schooner. In 1939, a canoe overturned under calm conditions, the sole survivor muttering of a great eye rising beneath the boat. He was later institutionalized. Some say the creature is a giant eel, others a relic of the Ice Age. Cryptozoologists point to sonar readings taken in the 1980s, unexplained movements, larger than any known species. Still, skeptics argue it's misidentification, shadows, or simply the power of suggestion from a name that feels more spell than label. Yet even today, lifeguards and boaters share unspoken warnings. Never swim alone at dusk. Avoid the deep middle when the water feels still, and if you hear a low gurgling sound beneath your craft, don't look down. The monster of Lake Chargagug Manchagagug Chabonagungamug may not seek to harm, but in its ancient watchful eyes, we are the trespassers. But though its guns are silent and its voyage is long over, something walks its steel corridors, something that never left the sea. Commissioned in 1949, the USS Salem earned the nickname the Sea Witch for her speed and presence. But it wasn't until her service as a floating hospital after the 1953 Ionian earthquake in Greece that the hauntings began. Hundreds of wounded were brought aboard, not all survived, and some say their spirits remained in the ship's steel bone. Volunteers and overnight guests have reported whispers echoing through the engine room. Others hear boots on metal grates where no one walks. The most chilling tale is of the burned man, a ghostly figure with melted skin and empty eye sockets, seen in the ship's medical bay, sometimes lying still, other times sitting upright. In 1991, a Navy veteran visited the Salem and abruptly left mid-tour, visibly shaken. He later wrote that he had seen a sailor who died on a sister ship decades before. It was him, he said. I know what I saw, and he saw me. Cold spots cling to the surgery room like invisible moths. Tourists report cameras failing, lights flickering, and the feeling of being watched, especially in the old sick bay where rows of stretchers once lay. Paranormal groups investigating the ship captured EVPs, some sounding like moans, others a soft, mournful whisper, "Help me." Skeptics cite echoes, creaking metal, or overactive imagination. But even the museum staff acknowledge something strange. They keep the lights low and speak quietly when locking up, as if not to disturb whatever still patrols the deck. The USS Salem may no longer sail the seas, but it remains a vessel for the past, a floating tomb adrift in time, where steel holds memory, and ghosts salute beneath forgotten flags. Legend 9. The Lady of Rendam. She appears only in storms, barefoot, drenched and glowing faintly in the moonlight. Along the back roads of Rendam, Massachusetts, travelers whisper of a woman in white who walks the forest edge, her eyes fixed on something no one else can see. They call her the Lady of Rendam. The legend begins in the mid-1800s with a woman named Eliza Fairweather. She lived in a farmhouse near Lake Archer and was engaged to a soldier who never returned from the Civil War. Each night, Eliza would walk the path by the lake, lantern in hand, waiting for a figure that never came. One night, in the teeth of a violent storm, she vanished. Her body was found days later, face up in the lake, still clutching the unlit lantern. Ever since, whenever a tempest rolls in, locals report seeing her near the lake or along the old carriage roads, always silent, always watching. In 1923, a traveling salesman crashed his car, swerving to avoid a figure in the road, a pale woman with soaked hair. He survived but never spoke again. In 1967, a hiker claimed he was led back to the trail by a woman matching Eliza's description. She vanished the moment he turned to thank her. His compass never worked right again, Even in modern times, the sightings persist. In 2008, a police officer on patrol spotted a woman standing alone in the rain by the woods. When he approached, she stepped back into the trees and disappeared without a trace. Dashcam footage caught only fog and static. Locals say the lady isn't dangerous, but she's not quite at peace either. Some leave lanterns near the path as tribute. Others whisper her name during storms, hoping to be spared from bad luck. But all agree, when the wind picks up and the trees begin to groan, it's best to stay on the road and keep your lights on. Because Eliza still walks random, forever searching, forever soaked in rain and sorrow. Legend 10. The Shadow of the Bridgewater Triangle. There's a stretch of land in southeastern Massachusetts that defies reason, a triangle of towns, woods and waters, where the veil between worlds wears dangerously thin. It's called the Bridgewater Triangle, and inside it, shadows don't follow light, they lead it. The legend gained name in the 1970s, but the stories date back centuries. Bordered roughly by Abington, Freetown and Rehoboth, this region has been home to Native American sacred sites, colonial battles and countless strange disappearances. Within its borders, the Hockomock Swamp, where phantom lights drift, Freetown Forest, where cult activity and mysterious deaths are whispered, and in the air above, reports of black triangles, floating silently across the sky. One recurring figure among the triangle's many mysteries is the shadow, a formless, tall silhouette seen in the forests and fields. Witnesses describe it as darker than the night itself, with no visible features, but an overwhelming sense of dread. It doesn't walk, it glides, and when it passes, all sound dies. In 1981, a hunter vanished in Freetown State Forest. His camp was untouched, his rifle undisturbed. The only clue was a torn notebook filled with frantic, unfinished entries. One page simply read, "It stands between the trees, it waits." In 1996, 3 teenagers camping near the swamp awoke to find their fire dead, and their watches frozen at 3. One of them claimed a shadowy shape stood by their tent, whispering something in a language he couldn't remember but still hears in dreams. Theories abound: ley lines, cursed land, echoes of ancient suffering. Some say it's the land itself fighting back. Others believe it's a breach, a soft spot in reality, where all the world's forgotten things slip through. Even today, people who enter the Bridgewater Triangle report losing time, hearing voices, or emerging with a deep, inexplicable sadness, as if something has followed them home, and maybe it has. Legend 11. The Ghosts of the Lizzie Borden House. Lizzie Borden took an axe. So begins the rhyme that still haunts Fall River, Massachusetts. But the true horror isn't just in the crime, it's in the silence that followed, and the whispers that still echo through the halls of 92 2nd Street. On August 4, 1892, Andrew and Abby Borden were found brutally murdered in their home. Andrew's face had been hacked beyond recognition. Abby was struck multiple times from behind, her body left cold on the guest room floor. Suspicion fell quickly on Lizzie, the 32-year-old daughter who lived there. But the evidence was thin, the trial a circus, and in the end, she was acquitted. Still the question remains, if not Lizzie, then who? The Borden house is now a bed and breakfast. Visitors sleep in the very rooms where blood once spilled, but rest is rare. Guests report doors opening on their own, icy hands brushing their necks, and the sound of weeping upstairs when no one is there. One woman claimed she woke to find an older woman standing at the foot of her bed, glaring. She recognized her later in a photograph. It was Abby Borden. Paranormal investigators have captured strange EMF readings and chilling EVP recordings. One famous clip features a voice hissing, "Why did you do it?" Footsteps echo in empty halls. The smell of flowers, said to be Lizzie's favorite, sometimes floods the sitting room for no reason. Some say Lizzie's guilt lies not in what she did, but in what she let happen. Others believe she lives on in the house, seeking revenge for a crime she swore she didn't commit. And then there are those who think Andrew and Abby never left, trapped in an endless loop of betrayal, blood, and broken trust. The rhyme may be old, but the house still listens, and when the lights go out in Fall River, the floorboards creak with the weight of accusation. Legend 12. The Devil's Footprint of Northboro. In the stone steps of an old church in Northboro, Massachusetts, lies a single strange imprint, cloven, scorched, and deep. Locals call it the Devil's Footprint, and the legend behind it is as chilling as the mark itself. The story goes back to the early 1700s, when a minister named Abijah Moores served in the town. Known for his fiery sermons and fearsome denunciations of sin, he claimed to have made a pact, not with the devil but against him. One stormy night, after weeks of strange happenings, livestock vanishing, a girl speaking in tongues, and grave soil overturned, Reverend Morris stood alone at his church and challenged the devil to appear. He got his wish. A blinding flash split the night sky. Thunder cracked not from the heavens but from the ground itself. Witnesses who dared peek from their windows swore they saw a dark figure atop the church steps, towering, horned, with eyes like coal and a smile full of knives. Morris confronted the shape, and according to town lore, drove it back with prayer. But not before the being stomped the stone, leaving a permanent hoof-shaped scar. The footprint remains to this day untouched by time, immune to weather and cold to the touch even in summer. Over the centuries, stories continued. A child vanished near the church in 1832, found days later muttering about the man with burning breath. In 1954, a mason tried to remove the footprint during renovations. His chisel shattered. He never returned to the site. Skeptics suggest the mark is a natural depression, a quirk of geology, but the town has left it undisturbed, cordoned with quiet reverence. Some still leave pennies or crosses nearby. Others refuse to go near it at all, because even now, late at night, people claim to hear heavy footsteps on the empty church steps, and smell sulfur on the wind. In a land of faith and fire, the devil left his mark, and centuries later, it still smolders in stone.